Well, Happy New Year, everybody. It is officially 2024. I don't write that many checks these days. Actually, that's Jill's job. So I don't really know how long it's going to take me to get used to the fact that it's 2024. Although I feel like in some instances I was kind of like already there. But either way, it's the new year. I hope everybody had a safe and happy, healthy, fun New Year's Eve. If you did anything, and even if you didn't, waking up and knowing it's a brand new year. Now, I don't know about you, my other favorite thing, although when someone does it to me, it's kind of annoying. I don't know if Androids do it, but if you text somebody Happy New Year, you get the whole explosion on your phone. And one of my friends last night was like, "Does it do it every time? Does it do it?" And it kept doing it. I'm like, "Yes, it does every time." So anyway, hope you had fun connecting with friends from all over, as I did as well, trying to see who's up and who's not up. But either way, I really am glad to be here again for the seventh night of the 12 days of Christmas. Now, of course, it's sort of unofficially the sixth since we missed that first one, but who's counting? And I'm losing count myself. So, couple of things, of course, as we start the program out. We just want to remind you, you're going to want to hang in till the end of the program because remember, new this year, something fun for you. Somebody is going to be a random winner of a $20 store credit to shop with us at Life. And that's going to be up to Paul and Cindy to pick a number at the end, and we'll see who that is. That one, you got to be in it to win it. On the other hand, I want you to remember as well that throughout the 12 days of Christmas, you do have our coupon code of TDOC23, and that gets you 10% off most everything online. And what that also gets you is that for every $10 that you spend with us, you get a ticket in the basket to go in for the drawing, which is going to happen on our wrap up party. I started to kind of put together a little arrangement here of some of what I have, some of what I don't have, which is going to be going into the basket that will then be, it's not raffled off really, but some random winner is going to be chosen. And also, I just want to kind of stand up to show you guys, I don't have a tall enough screen. I did the high hair today, and then my lanyard's a little too low, so you're missing the whole outfit. But I want to stand up and show you guys. So I have to tell you, putting it on tonight, this is these are the hand felted lanyards that Carol makes out of llama fiber. And they're all a little different, but this one I really loved in particular to go with my outfit since I'm a little brown and autumnal today. And I'm not trying to say I was kind of surprised, but I had on a different necklace and I was like, no, 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 I want to see how it looks. And I think really, honestly, with like the right outfit, especially something that's kind of plain behind, I hate when I sound surprised, but I'm like, I really love this. This one in particular, which of course is available, but this is the one that was listed as a yellow green, I believe. And the charms that she's got on the bottom are really just gorgeous. So thought that I would model it because one of these are going to also be in the basket that's going to be raffled off. But don't forget that these also are still available for sale. I know a couple of you have scooped them up, and they're all one of a kind. And I think we've got maybe 6 or 7 left in the store. So remember, we've got that wrap up party. That's the biggest thing. So on Saturday night, if you don't have any other plans, you guys have been with me every night. So I hope you'll join me. And those of you watching on YouTube, wah, wah, if you're watching the after party, it's already over. So remember, Saturday night, 7 p.m., that's just going to be a fun time. We're going to kind of recap our guests. Remember, we've got trivia questions that I'll be coming up with based on each of the guests and their presentations. And then we'll be awarding prizes for whoever answers those first in the chat. We will be selecting our winner for our basket and just having a whole lot of fun kind of recapping these 12 days of Christmas. So without further ado, that's all the homework that I wanted to be able to get out of the way. So I'm actually going to do the honor of introducing this lovely couple rather than turning it over to them, because I think I really want to get across what my intentions was for tonight's presentation. Last year, as I pulled this together last minute, merely because I was just afraid to put something new out there. Always happy to admit that. This year, I had planned in advance. And I also really purposely tried to bring together a collection of people for us to be in conversation with that represented all different aspects of fiber and the fiber industry. And one of the things I thought about when I looked at my lineup last year was I didn't have somebody that might look like you. Now, when I say that, meaning, well, they don't look like you, all right, Paul?
No, right.
But, in terms of looking at a guest and saying, wow, that really could be me. And maybe I've thought about having livestock, whether it's fibered livestock or not, as a pet. And just a really interesting combination of a lot of things that we have here. So, Paul and Cindy Millard live down in Virginia. Some of you already know them. They are Wing and Wheel Farm. They are shearing clients of mine. They do happen to have a couple of my, well, several now. We're on to several of my llamas, which we will get into. Um, but at the same time, I really wanted somebody on that were homesteaders, if you will, people that have regular full-time jobs. This is not their business. Having livestock is not their business. It's just their hobby. It's something that they love. And at the same time, being able to show you how you can balance that kind of lifestyle, because I'm not even a good example of that since this is what I do for my occupation. So it'll be interesting to learn about their occupations and how they balance all of this. Plus, Cindy also is involved in the fiber arts. So not only is she a knitter, but she is also a weaver. And we'll find out a little bit more about all of that. So that was my intention for this evening. Now, I am going to admittedly say that also I wanted to specifically find somebody, though, that was involved in other livestock. So we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about llama stuff because that's what we had Carol Ray on for, Buck Hollow Llamas. But I remembered so vividly last year that so many of you loved my conversation with Autumn Olive Farms and learning about their pastured pork business, farm, production. And one of the things that I love is the things that I learn when I go to their farm, because not only do they have the llamas, which I think was maybe secondary. We'll have to find all that out. But they have Nigerian dwarf goats that they breed. And so there's a whole milk production part of it on a hobby basis. But I found it so interesting, find it interesting. And particularly this past, maybe it was 2 years ago now, we made regatta cheese, and I put that on my Instagram stories, and a lot of you really love that as well. I loved eating it. And so there's just a lot. And then there's actually some other fibered animals that we're going to talk about. So I wanted to do that introduction because I wanted you guys to have my intention for what this was all about tonight. But at the same time, I do want to take a few minutes. And so I'm going to turn it over and say, Cindy and Paul, thank you so much for being a part of this evening. And I will tell you, I know they reached out to me. We always chat with all of my guests before we go on for the evening. And they did say, they're like, that's going to be a tough act to follow. Linda was amazing. And I said, yes, she was amazing. But that's exactly what I said to them. I said, but I want people to see somebody that they might look in the mirror and say, this could be me, or something that seems more obtainable. And, not that we can't touch the likes of Linda Courtwright, but, something that was more relatable. I think that's exactly the word that I would be looking for. So, Cindy and Paul, thank you so much for being willing to be part of our 12 Days of Christmas and join us tonight in conversation.
Our pleasure.
So, with that grand introduction that I gave for you guys, I think maybe since the whole point of it is that you do have regular full-time jobs, why don't you both introduce yourselves, and let's start out by telling everybody what it is that you do.
You go first.
You want me to go first? Okay. I'm Paul Millard. I am a retired Army officer. I spent just shy of 23 years active duty. I currently, as a civilian, work for the Army, and in July it'll be 15 years that I've been doing that. I actually have a commute of about an hour and 20 minutes
Exactly.
to work every day, because I work in the Pentagon. So
He works in the Pentagon. How cool is that? I'm sorry. I was waiting and waiting. I'm like, when is he going to say that? When is he going to say that? That's so cool.
I knew I kept you waiting, kept you hanging.
Yeah.
So can
But
you tell us, are you allowed to tell us what you do?
Well, I work in the Army G3, which is Army Operations. What I do is I help to structure all the units that are in the Army, specifically sustainment units, um, and everything from uh, theater sustainment commands down to chaplain detachments, believe it or not, for not only the active Army, but the USAR and the National Guard. Not only their current structure, but we look out approximately 7 years as to what the Army is going to need in the future. So
Now, I
that's
know
what I
you
do.
are an active role on the farm, as well. So just to give a sense though, because in top of the commute and then obviously your work day. So what, what time do you leave in the morning? What time do you get back? Like, are you gone? Is it just a 5 day a week? Just to give people perspective.
Okay. I am up at about 4:30 in the morning. I'm on the road by 6. I usually leave the office at between 6 and 6:30 at night. So I'm really not getting home until 7:30, depending on the time of year. Like, now it's dark when I get home. So I do what I can to help Cindy because she'll be home from her work. I'll do what I can to help out with the animals to make sure they're all set for the evening.
yeah.
Now, the one thing I find interesting, because I have a couple of my clients that are much like you. So I think that there's people that choose to have the commute, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're working over in Washington, D.C., which you live in Virginia. So, you're just kind of going over yonder. But is it so that while you're working there, you want your home lifestyle to be different versus living in the city?
Yes. Uh, we actually got the farm that we're on right now a year before I retired because we were looking for land. We knew we wanted to have animals. I think even when we first got married, we talked about maybe having a bed and breakfast in the Gettysburg area at that time. And then when we were stationed out at Fort Lewis in the state of Washington, we went and we had 3 small kids at that time. We went to a bed and breakfast that was actually on a farm and sort of fell in love with that, and the kids really loved it. So that's always been in the back of our mind
Yeah.
of having a little piece of land and some animals.
Now, I guess let's give Cindy an opportunity to jump in before we start diving down the rabbit hole.
Mhm. Oh, so I'm a nurse. I've been a registered nurse for 40 years, a
Yeah.
long time. Mostly emergency room. And I mean, I love it. I'm a caretaker, it's pretty much bottom line. And so um I wanted to, like a lot of little girls, I wanted to be a veterinarian, but that just didn't work out back then, finding a way to go to college. So I went to nursing school and I've really learned to love it. Like when we were in Germany, I didn't work and I just couldn't wait to come back and start doing my thing. And so I mean, I can't see myself stopping being a nurse. I really love it. And then, that caretaker kind of overflows into like the animals. So now I'm kind of like I love learning about how to take care of them. And yeah, so I really like it. So I'm in charge of all the medical stuff.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, I know, especially in the one instance, that we'll talk about, with regards to the llamas, but how much of uh, did it help you in terms of getting started with livestock, having your medical background and having that experience
That does
feel
help.
like that made you a little bit more comfortable, or do you find that there's ways in which similarities cross over, or information that you know from people medicine that you can kind of transfer over to animal medicine?
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's been plenty of times that I've missed things, don't get me wrong, but you learn from when things happen. But, I think just like observing, like it's very easy for me to figure out that a kid is getting pneumonia, like, their respiratory rate, their mucous membranes, like
And
just
when
really,
she says kid, guys, don't forget we're talking about a
oh,
baby.
goat kids.
Go kids.
Yeah, goat kids.
Although might also know when a two-legged kid gets pneumonia as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done pediatrics a lot, so yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then okay, so you go to a bed and breakfast when your kids are small, and then that's a concept that you fall in love with. So the concept of having livestock is what you fell in love with from being on the bed and breakfast? And then
Yes.
how much longer was it? When did it happen? Like, take
Well,
it back to, because, and really, again, and I mean this, whether or not there's somebody on here or not, but somewhere along the line, at some point, people are like, I think I want to have livestock. What do we do? And then how do you actually get to the place where, like Linda was laughing last night talking about when the goats came home and then the goats were in the middle of the street. But like, so how did that happen for you guys, in which it went from a thought to, we actually have them, and the choices that you made and what you started with? Because I don't even know these answers.
It was probably about 14 or 15 years
well,
later.
it's all our kids' fault.
Yeah.
Human kids' fault. Because when we were still living in a neighborhood, we had a pony on the Quantico Marine Base
Yeah.
because the youngest daughter wanted to ride horses. So, and it was a great place to learn how to take care of horses. It was on a marine
It was on the
base,
Marine Base.
so it was all kinds of rules, and that we really learned how to take care of a horse. So we had that pony, and then a nurse practitioner that I worked with, she kept telling me, Cindy, I want you to be my neighbor. And I was like, well, I don't know how that's going to work because he was still in the army. But we came out here and looked, and her sister had this little 5 acres. And we were Barbara's neighbor. So that's kind of how we found this place. And then another daughter wanted goats. I never imagined that I would be the one that's now like, all about goats. And I
Well,
always wanted
you
llamas
do
because
know
of the
that
fiber.
as a parent, wait, but you do know as a parent, when your child says they want goats, you know that
I'm
those
like, yeah.
are goats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
reliving my childhood. Yes, we want goats.
Yeah.
So, and so I still have one horse from Sarah
Yeah.
that we take care of. But my daughter Rochelle, she lives nearby. So we talk about goats a lot and she helps me. So she's
So
still,
did you was it Nigerian dwarf goats right from the start?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
why was that choice made? Was it have to, so for anybody, and I mean, I can certainly also let Cindy, of course, chime in, but part of this as well, to have an understanding about, different types of animals, goats in particular. So when you're looking at a goat, generally people will think about your dairy goat. It's a larger size goat. There's, if my memory serves me correct, I could name them. I think it's 6 different breeds, major breeds of dairy goats. And then there's a meat goat, which that's the boar goat. And then there's 2 breeds of miniature goats. So one is the African pygmy, the other one is the Nigerian dwarf goat. And at least always from my information, the Nigerian dwarf goat has much more dairy-like characteristics. So you kind of got this tiny, cute little goat that then can also produce milk. So I'm assuming, is that because you had the smaller property, or what was your reason for choosing the miniature goats?
Well, Rochelle had a friend in high school who had them, so that helped. And just researching, they just really fit for us because you can handle them. Like a Nubian will look you in the eye. So, and the pygmy goats are quite a bit smaller than the Nigerian dwarfs. So I just feel like their size is really manageable. Um, they're like a big dog. Like they might get up to 60 pounds. So, and they still have a lot of butter fat and are, they're really I just love them.
Yep.
They're smart like dogs. I don't know. They're just great.
Well, I always do say goats are like the dog of the barnyard animals. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, my sheep are cool, but a lot of times, sheep can be sheepish. So I do always say, like, if you want to feel like you have a little bit of livestock, but you're looking for something to be like a dog, a goat is definitely a good way to go. Now, when you
Mhm.
got them initially, was it kind of like a 4-H project or just a pet? Did you know that you were going to be breeding them, initially?
Yeah, we bought one that she was supposed to be pregnant, but she
She
wasn't.
wasn't, but she did have a kid.
No, she ended up dying. She died when we were on vacation.
Oh,
Our first goat.
first good.
But
Yeah.
her son, Willie, he just died
Yeah.
this past spring. So we had him like for 14 years.
So you bought her and she had a kid outside, you mean?
Yes, we bought her with her kid
With her
Willie.
kid, Willie.
And then she was supposed to be pregnant and she wasn't. And we bred her again. And then when we were at the beach, she bloated.
She bloated.
So then, funny story, Rochelle and I were at the feed store and we met this lady at the feed store. And she lived out here part of the time and had a bunch of goats. And so Rochelle and I would go out there and feed for them, like during winter storms and stuff like that. So she ended up giving us a goat with 3 kids. And so really that goat is like the base for
The matriarch.
all of our.
I was going to say, there is your first problem.
Fine.
Going to the feed store, you're going to run into somebody
There's like the first time we
that
were
you
buying
need
goat
something.
food.
And then the
Yeah.
second one, as soon as you were telling me that you were helping out, on her farm, I'm like, oh, they're getting something for free.
Yep.
And it's going to be 4
Yeah.
legs.
But it worked out really well. And we didn't even have her registration papers or the kids. And I knew we needed to have registered goats because people in 4-H, if you're going to sell them, it's better to have them registered. So I couldn't get those kids registered. I actually sold them at an auction with like a prayer. Like I was like, and
Yeah.
they got good homes. And the man who bought the 2 does, he contacted me to see if I could get them registered. And I was like, oh my goodness, I
Because his
couldn't.
granddaughter was starting 4-H.
Right. But long story short, I called, everything worked out. I finally got the papers. They didn't care that I registered them here. And I got them registered. And then a couple years later, we were at the fair. And with my work schedule, I don't usually take animals to the fair. I just go to the fair one day. And this teenager was
Yeah.
talking about our farm. And here she's the girl. And those goats were bred and milked and we're doing great.
That's
So
amazing.
it's
I
kind
mean,
of
and
fun.
that's why we hope, if you get into livestock and if you if you choose to breed livestock, as we said in one of these talks, if you want to make more, you can't keep them all, right? And so,
Right.
it's always a difficult thing to let go of what is arguably your children, but at the same time, then that's also a great way to be able to pay it forward and help somebody else, start that kind of life
Right.
that, you always enjoy. So to be able to run into somebody, that can be the affirmation of that is amazing.
It was amazing. And so if you don't have kids, you can't have milk. So I've been
Yeah.
working really hard at selling these kids with some help from a friend who's doing my website. So now I feel like
So let
I
me
can breathe.
backtrack though for people just to again help give everybody context. So again, just in case if you're not understanding, although I would think maybe most people, if you are purchasing a dog, if you're going to the shelter, you're getting a dog from the shelter, a lot of times not any history or whatever they've been able to piece together. So when Cindy's talking about the goats being registered, so just like you guys hear me talk about my llamas being registered, so that just sort of validates your breeding program. It gives you the family history, the family tree, and it's paper that goes along with them, just as if you were going to buy a dog that's registered with the AKC. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's providing that validation and then also providing the ability to hopefully ensure as well, though, that somebody is not going to, if you sell a goat without the papers, technically they're not supposed to be able to breed them, or at least then they wouldn't be able to register them. And you
Right,
might
they can-
have that, for one reason or another too. Now, did you ever show your goats?
Just a couple times. It was fun. I want to do it a little bit more now just to get my goats out there so people see them because I've been working really hard at breeding correctly for like the right structure and for milk production.
So
So our
talk
goat,
about that. I mean, really, so right there, because I know that was the one thing, and I can't remember the details of it, but when we were chatting a lot about your breeding program and you were talking to me about somebody coming to the farm to be able to like assess certain things. So
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
sure you didn't start out this way, right? But now you've got goats, you're breeding them. So again, and also I'm just trying to help make sure, we're looking at the majority of people that are involved in fiber arts, not livestock, but at the same time, I know that the community loves learning different things and being involved in different things, but I'm also just mindful of kind of like backtracking and making sure everybody is on the same page. So the first thing, just to make sure people do understand, especially because when you keep using the word kid, of course, a kid is a baby goat. And so if you have an animal that you're looking to get milk from it, I get it seems like it should be assumed, but let's just make sure we do all understand that that goat has to be bred. She has to give birth. And then now Cindy has a different way of doing it, which I admire, but in a lot of commercial, high production industry standards, like cows, when that animal gives birth, then those babies are removed. They are supplemented with some other type of milk, usually, powdered milk or some sort, because you need to get all of the milk from the mom that she's producing to go to human consumption. So that's normally how that process would work. And then you can't also indefinitely milk that mom out. At some point in time, you have to stop the cycle, allow her to rejuvenate, and then she's probably already bred again, depending on people's programs. I'm not saying them. And then that's how that starts over again, because after a while, just like a human being, you're not going to always be producing peak milk production, day in, day out, and day in, day out. So I just want to make sure everybody was kind of like on that page. And so much like with my llama breeding program, what are you looking at when you are breeding your goats? Like, what are different characteristics that you're looking for as you, I'm sure, have gotten smarter, and more knowledgeable about your breeding program?
so I'm trying to get goats that are like breeding so that they're easy to milk. I mean,
Now,
all udders
what
are
does that mean?
different.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, that their teats and their udder is easy to milk. I mean, I have a milking machine, but not everybody does. So you want to breed a goat that's going to stand there and let you milk it, and it's going to be easy to milk.
So it's personality as well as the structure of the
Oh
teeth.
yeah, like sometimes a goat, like the first time their first fresheners, they have a really hard time on the stand. They're frantic. They don't want you to touch them. They're kicking. Like I'll give them some grace the first time, but by the second time, they better be standing there and letting me milk them. So without me having to like hold a leg or elbow them, you know what I mean? Like I
Well, and
have
I'm
one.
sure if you're like trying to collect the milk and all of a sudden somebody's having a hissy fit, and the next thing you know, they
Right.
kick the bucket over and there goes all the milk you're looking to
Right.
collect.
Yes.
Right.
So it's disposition besides structure.
Right. So, and when we do that linear appraisal, when the judge comes and looks at the whole goat, it's just like your llamas or like a dog. It's like the structure, but with the goats, it's their udder.
Yeah.
It's
So I sort of equated to, the Westminster Dog Show. The judge there is going over the dog, looking at its structure with his hands
and how it moves.
and how it moves. The linear appraisal is the same thing. They're looking at, feeling, making sure it's within the right height. They're looking at their structure, their withers, their back end, how their legs are straight and really determines, their shoulder structure and everything. They've got supposed to have like a slight slope on their back end. And of course the udder gets the a third of the score. So you want a doe that's in milk to be looked at and judged during the linear appraisal.
But it's a little better than a dog show or a goat show because you're not competing. You're just
Right.
getting a score on your goat.
And the judge is communicating with you and everybody else there
It's very
about
educational.
what's good and not so good sometimes with
About-
the goat.
Yeah, so it kind of helps you know what you need to improve and where your goat stands.
Yeah.
And then it's on their registration. So it kind of helps you with selling too.
Now, does this person come to your farm and do you have to pay them to do that?
Yeah,
Yes.
and we have hosted it a few times because we have the barn. Because
Okay.
a lot of people that have goats don't necessarily have a barn.
So meaning other people can come in, bring their animals as well to
Yeah.
have them evaluated.
Which helps lower the price
The more
for the
goats you have.
judge coming. So,
Yeah.
all our goats are registered with the American Dairy Goat Association, ADGA, and ADGA is who sponsors the linear appraisal. The judges are associated with that.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun because other farms come. This last time we had a couple people that hadn't done it before, so it was nice to kind of mentor them. And some of them were upset because their goats didn't get a good score and they were just gonna like get rid of their goats. And it's like, no, don't do that. Just work on better breeding, you know.
Yeah, I think there was like 6 or 7 people that have brought goats. So besides, we've got 20 or
Yeah, but
approximately
we
20.
only had like 8 in milk.
Yeah,
and the
we only
box.
had 8 milk, but all total there was an additional 15 goats that were
That's
there
fun.
that came to be. It was
I
a
was
lot
just
of
gonna
fun.
say, so it's a nice, it sounds like it's fun, it's a nice community, and at the same time, it's educational. See, we don't have anything like that in the llama industry. So, I mean, I just find that interesting. I mean, you have judges clinics, but nobody's coming to your farm to assess. And I think also too, the assessment is very subjective, where
Yeah.
in your case, I mean, I'm sure there's still some subjectivity, but yet
Mhm.
you're actual looking at, you know, things that you can have an evaluation on versus just, is this llama stretchier, you know, is this fleece, you know, whatever. I mean, there's just a lot of subjectivity that way though. So the thing that I find interesting, so for instance, a lot of people will kid around with me because they'll say, oh, you have a farm, you must be up so early. I'm like, oh, hell no. And what I will usually say is, I'm not milking cows or I'm not milking goats. I can get up whenever I want to. So now, like you made a comment that at least at this time you had 8 in milk. So now I'm like, I mean, I get you have to get up early for your work schedules, but legitimately milking animals, there's a lot more that you are regimented to. Now, do you guys milk once a day or twice a day?
Once a day. So when the goat has her kids, I let the kids with the mom for 2 weeks, around 10 days, 2 weeks, depending on the size of the kids. I'm not going to take them away when the kids, are smaller. Like I watch the size of the kids. Then I start taking the kids, the moms, I separate them at night, and then I milk the moms in the morning, and then I give them back to the kids for the day. So I separate at night, milk in the morning, and then they spend the rest of the day. The only time I do milk testing where like once a month, I take samples, I weigh each doe's milk and sample it, and it goes to a dairy lab. And it really helps me with like my, how I'm feeding them, their health and who's producing the most protein and butter fat. So those days when the kids are small are kind of rough in the barn because they're crying for their moms. And then I try to bottle feed them, and most of them will take a bottle, but there's a few that are so stubborn they will not take a bottle. But I mean, they're eating some grain, but they sound like they think they're dying because they want their moms. But for the most part, I milk every morning before I go to work.
So, and that's what I was going to ask you, and I don't know that you answered it by that question of doing the testing. So, in all reality, the fact that you are allowing the kids to stay with mom for a portion of the time, is that an average practice that most people do, or is that just something that you choose to do? Because I would imagine that is reducing the amount of milk, though, that you are able to get. It has to, right?
It does, but I still get enough for what we do with it.
Yeah.
So, like I actually am not milking anybody now. They're all done and dried up. And the last two, I was just hand milking it wasn't worth getting the machine out and cleaning it before I go to work. And, you know, I was just hand milking them and they're dry now.
But once you've taken the kids totally away from mothers, there are times when you'll milk twice a day.
Yeah, if you really want to keep a doe in milk, yes, then you do have to milk twice a day.
So explain to people why that is. I know the answer, but in terms of doing the milking in order to keep the milk production going, why?
Well, once you take the kids away, they'll drop a lot, you know, because they want to feed their babies.
But
So-
if you want to dry them off, you just stop milking. So what
Right.
is it in terms of the act of milking to help continue to get them for the
The
production?
process of milking helps with production. So
Mhm.
as long as they're in milk, as long as you keep milking. I mean, they don't all like I have a doe that will stay in milk for a year. She's a super milker, but most of them last about 7, 8 months.
Okay, so you've got this tiny little goat, because really they're not that big. I would say
Yeah.
what, like, I would say maybe kind of like Cocker Spaniel size.
Well, they're
they're
probably about
taller.
40 to 60 pounds, depending. Like the
Yeah.
bucks are probably closer to 60. The does
Right.
are more like 40 to 50 pounds.
They
But I mean,
come up to
essentially, you have
they
this
come
tiny,
up to your knee.
right. So I mean, but what I'm getting at is it's virtually a tiny little goat. How much milk? So people have an idea, like how much milk when you're, let's just say, at peak production. Based on
Probably-
your system allowing the kids to nurse naturally in some ways. So how much do you get per goat per day?
Probably 2 cups. So if I'm milking 6 goats, I'm getting more than a quart and a half a day. So like then on the weekend, I have all this milk I have to take care of. You know, I have to make stuff out of it.
Well, I was gonna say, so that's kind of like where I wanted to lead up to, because I don't even know the answer. So when you milk out the goat, now I know you were talking about all these things that probably most people, including myself, I mean, I know from my animal science days, butter fat, and I know that all that language, but I mean, like, what does that equate to for the average person? So you've got this milk, and then for all intents and purposes, I mean, I know you can't technically sell it, or maybe in Virginia you can, but
Yeah.
you can drink the raw milk, right?
Yeah. But
But
we usually
she pasteurizes the milk.
I pasteurize it like 90% of the time.
What
Unless
do you
I
have
know
to do to do that?
how do I do that?
What do you have to do? I mean, in brevity, is that just a
Oh.
heating process?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you heat it up to a certain temperature, 140 degrees. You keep it there for like a half hour, and then you put like an ice bath around it. So like actually the cooling process is like the most important part of pasteurizing it.
Now, why
So-
do you, if you know your goats, you know what's going into them, you know the health of them, why do you choose to pasteurize it for your own consumption?
Because I share it with people. Like I take cheese to work and I give it to people. So I always I feel better about it being pasteurized.
Well,
And
and so that makes, so again, I understand, but what would be the potential harm if somebody was to consume raw milk versus pasteurized milk? And like, I wasn't sure, but if you're saying in Virginia, you're not technically allowed to sell it either. So, what are some things, like what could potentially happen?
I think listeriosis can be passed through the milk. I think that's the most important thing.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's all I can really think of. It's just, the government controls raw milk.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, and I mean, I know I met people who've gotten listeriosis from unpasteurized apple cider. So you just have to be really careful when you're providing food and drink for people.
Right.
So I just feel more comfortable about pasteurizing it. It's just like part of my process. So
Yeah,
Now,
we'd have to have a certified kitchen in order to sell it.
sell it, yeah.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's understandable. I just, was curious. I know at least in our area, sometimes the way people will get around it, not saying you should get around it, but they will sell raw milk to somebody if that person says like they're using it, if they breed dogs, that sometimes, people will use the milk for that. And maybe they legitimately do, but that's I guess a way around it. I mean, I know there's a certain sector of people, that would prefer to have the raw milk versus pasteurized, and that's probably a whole other, conversation. But so, okay, you milk the goat, and then you get the milk. Now, do you have to pasteurize it that day, or can you refrigerate it for a period of time?
Yeah, I can refrigerate it for a few days and then pasteurize it. Like when I have, a gallon and a half, I'll pasteurize it.
And then once it's pasteurized, how long can you keep it, or have it for consumption before you feel like you
Oh,
like do something with it?
probably like a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I
So
mean, yeah, for your intents and purposes, especially if it's just the two of you, minus when you get visitors or things like that. I mean, I guess that even that seemingly small amount of milk per goat, if you've got 6 or 8 of them milking, I mean, it kind of adds up pretty fast.
It
yeah,
does.
so well, our grandson he'll drink goat milk. So, he doesn't know any difference if there was milk in the fridge and he has goat milk. So he has had it, but mostly I make things out of it. Like I make my own yogurt, I make kefir,
Wait, I have a quick
ricotta.
question before we get to there, because that's what I was going to ask you. But I do, and I just remember a little bit, so I don't know if you have more information. Meaning, there might be some people on here. So I know for somebody who's lactose intolerant, they are able to better digest goat milk.
Right.
I only vaguely remember it has something to do with the size of the fat globules or something, that somebody's bile can break it down easier. I don't know. There might be somebody on here that has no idea
Well,
about that. I mean, I'm
it's
sure if
the
you're lactose intolerant, you've looked into these things, but at the same time, like, what makes goat milk easier to digest? Does that mean it's better?
I think it's the type of lactose is in it. And I just remember Rochelle, our daughter,
Yeah.
she'll say the goat milk can be digested like in like 20 minutes or something very short, and cow's milk takes like all day.
Mhm.
If she's on here, she would probably be
She
saying,
is
Mom, you should
actually,
know
I was
this.
going to say, she can maybe just drop it in the chat, because I know I saw her comment in the chat earlier. She said, "Hi, Mom." But,
Yeah. So Rochelle, put that in the chat because I know you know these things.
and I just remember again from my sort of animal science days that it has something to do with the size of the fat globules and your body's ability to break that down. That's kind of
Yeah.
all I remember.
Well,
And I know,
I think that goat milk is more naturally homogenized, like the fat is throughout it. I
Mhm.
mean, it will separate to some cream at the top, but not as easily as cow's milk.
Yeah.
Mhm. And then so now I wanted to get that out of the way, just because I thought it might be, interesting for people if they weren't familiar with that. So what are your favorite things to do with the milk?
Okay, well, I like yogurt, so I make plain yogurt a lot.
I
And
like cheese.
he likes cheese. Who doesn't? But I think feta is my favorite. It's just so good and fresh. And then the chevre, but a lot of times we don't eat it. Like, but I don't know. I
Well,
think
unless
chevre.
we'll put it in the pastry.
Yeah, you
That's
can cook with
Feel
it.
free to make it and have it on hand and send it home with me if that's not your favorite.
Yeah. So, but feta's my favorite. And then
Yeah.
ricotta, like we made when you were here, is like the
So
fastest thing to
hungry
make.
right now.
No,
My
like
stomach is growling.
if I have too much milk and I don't know what to do with it, I make ricotta and then you can
Okay.
put it in the freezer. But feta, I think is my favorite.
Yeah.
It's really
Just gives some idea, because I really have no idea. And of course, there's so many other things, we're going to dive into. But I know I made ricotta with you that evening, and I was amazed at how super simple it was. That's pretty much, it seems almost like an immediate process to me. But, and there's yeah, so it's
There's Rochelle. Thank you, Rochelle.
dropped in the chat. But for the other cheeses, is there a wait period, to the feta versus the chèvre? Like, how long does it take for you to get then a product for you to be able to eat?
Um, the feta just takes like part of the day and you have to mind it a little bit more. There's a couple more processes. And the chèvre is a little simpler and the ricotta is the easiest. So for the chèvre and the feta, you have to buy like a culture. It's
Mhm.
very easy to order. You can order on Amazon. And I've never really made hard cheeses. I've thought about it when I've had an overabundance of milk,
Mhm.
but it's like, to buy different,
Yeah.
it's a whole different process. So I just stick to the soft cheeses. But the feta is
Which ones do you have to hang in the
the feta
Okay.
and the chevre. So you get it like you put the culture in and it makes it more firm. And then you put it like in cheesecloths or molds, and then the whey comes out. So then you're left with the curds and whey. And that's the chevre. And then you can salt it or flavor it. Our feta, after it's been in the cheesecloth, you like crumble it up and you put different kinds of salts on it, and then you let it sit in the fridge for a couple days, and then it's just perfectly yummy
Hmm.
feta. It's really good.
And then also, I know that you use the goat milk for other products.
Soap. We
Now,
make
have
soap.
you done lotions or anything like that, or you do the
I
soap?
haven't done that yet, but that's on the list of things to do. And then the whey that's left over from the cheese,
Mhm.
I get
Right.
that. I use that in my dog food, or
Okay.
the chickens get it, so I don't
Yep.
waste any of that
Any of it.
either.
Well, let's backtrack to the soaps though, because you just made some today that Cindy can show us. And then also, Cindy is going to be sending me some soaps that are going to be added to the basket that will be raffled off on the after party. So thank you so much for adding some of your goat milk soap to it. So show it up, hold it up at the screen.
As you can see, it's a little snowflake on it.
I was gonna say, come a little
Look
closer, like
closer.
you're doing with me. There you go. That's awesome. So tell us what that is. You just made. I was talking to them this morning. Not
Yeah.
even this morning. I talked to you late morning. It was almost noon, and those soaps were not made. So,
No.
what
We just
type of
made them.
soap is it?
So it's the
Closer.
the glycerin pour and mold. We want to start doing the cold press, which is with the lye and the different lotions, like the different oils. But so this is glycerin and honey, some beeswax, and the goat milk, of course, and then a scent, and then just a little color on top. And I mean, everybody I give it to loves it. It's real sudsy,
And it
lotiony.
seems pretty simple considering that, like I said, we probably, hung up by 11:30 and there was no soaps, and now
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
But we're gonna try the
I mean,
cold
that's
press.
there's like 8 of these, and then she has one that's oblong. It's got a snowman on it. I
Yeah, so we
mean,
just made one batch.
one batch.
Well, thank you so much for donating some of that to go to the basket. And again, that really just adds to, as I keep saying, kind of like the keepsake that we're creating, so that there's a little bit of something from each of our guests going into the basket that some very lucky person is going to get. So with that, let's get off the goats. So tell me well, actually, I don't want to totally get off the goats. Where
Yeah.
does the fiber thing come in? Because then you actually do also have these other special kind of goats that I do want people to learn about briefly if they're unfamiliar with it. So you've got Nigerian dwarf goats. That's your only livestock in addition to the horses, right?
And the llamas.
And the lungs.
No, but you didn't have llamas yet. No, no, no. I'm saying
No,
in your
right. We
in
started with
terms of your farm
like-
and adding things on.
Yeah.
right. So the fiber, you want to know where that came from?
Yeah, so
Well,
where did that come from?
Well, because
my
my grandmother
girls.
was a weaver. She wove rag rugs, and I always wanted to weave. So when we first got married, there was a weaving studio in Indiana, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
and I was so
My
excited.
hometown.
So I took lessons, and we bought a shacked Mighty Wolf, and I'm so glad we bought it then
Four
because we
heddles.
wouldn't have been able to afford it after we had
Yeah.
kids and we're moving all the time in the army. So I've had a loom and I've been a weaver for a while.
Yep.
And when we were, like Paul said, when we were at Fort Lewis, Washington, I took a spinning class with somebody. I don't even know where I met this person, but I was learning to spin with llama fiber. So that's what gave me my idea that I've always wanted a llama because I loved spinning the llama.
And every place we have lived except
Germany.
Germany, she's had at least one Angora rabbit.
Yeah.
And how many do you have on the farm now?
Just two.
Just two now.
Okay, I feel like I don't really ever get to see them much because we're always so focused on everyone else. But so okay, so right now you've got horses, you have the Nigerian dwarf goats. So in terms of then adding fibered animals onto your farm, who came next?
The llama.
It was the llamas first because we got Mary and Swash when we went to
Get the pony.
get the pony.
Yeah.
The
All right,
new
but then
pony.
before then we get on to llamas though, then let's go back and stick with the
Oh, you wanna
goats.
hear?
Okay.
I
who wants to
do. So
hear
why
about-
don't you also tell people what other kind of goats you have?
So I have a dual purpose goat called a Nigora. So it's a breed from a Nigerian,
an oops
no,
breeding?
Nigerian dwarf goat with an Angora goat. And there's also Hygoras where people have bred the little pygmy goats, and they're really tiny. But these Nigerian Nigoras they're pretty big.
They're pretty big.
They're probably like 70 pounds, some of them. So
Mhm.
I had an interest in that, and somebody knew that, and they did have an oops breeding. And then I got two of their Nigoras. And then I since have bred them and milked them. And it's great because they're a big goat and they give you a lot of milk. So, but right now we have three that are more, I've bred them back to an Angora buck, my friends have.
Mhm.
And so I just this year, I hope two of them are pregnant. I bred them to one of my Nigerian bucks.
Yeah.
Because they're really heavy on the fiber. They're beautiful. So I want to see how they do with milking.
So in breeding
I
them
think that-
back to an Angora buck, we've gone from a 50% probably up to about an 85% with the
Or
two
more.
subsequent breedings or more. So now we want to go back and breed
To the
to
dairy.
a Nigerian for
Yeah.
So
for dairy.
with the Nigora, does it matter if does the buck have to be one breed or another and the doe one breed or another, or it doesn't matter, like in terms of the standards? Because I'm not sure of that. So is it like does the mom have to be a Nigerian dwarf and the buck has to be an Angora, or it doesn't matter?
I don't think it matters. And
Okay.
then when there's
It would just matter for subsequent breedings, like if you breed the offspring to another Nigerian, it's probably going to be more Nigerian. You'll get less of the fiber and more of the milk. So,
Yeah.
it just depends on what you're looking for, more of the fiber or more of the milk production.
Well,
Yeah.
even with the breeding of an Angora goat and a Nigerian dwarf goat, I think I asked you this once before, but I have just slightly a little more experience with people that had Pygoras. And at least what I had learned was that in getting the offspring, you're still not guaranteed. And they had them graded as like A, B's, and C's, where like,
Yeah, the fiber
okay,
for the
so is
fiber.
For the
is that
fiber.
the same thing?
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
So it's like essentially what that means then, folks, is that so if you breed these two together, we all know genetics, you're still not guaranteed to get anything in particular. So you can have a kid that looks more like the Nigerian dwarf, which if you're
Right.
looking for fiber, you're shit out of luck. And then you can get one that is much more like the Angora, but then there's also one in the middle, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like the first ones we had, their fiber, I mean, it was okay.
It was okay.
But
But it
adding the
was-
Angora again, like the ones we have now, they have really nice fiber.
Really, really nice fiber.
Yeah. So, but we wanted to keep with the dual purpose goat. So we're going back to a dairy breeding.
Now, if
So it
somebody
should be-
asked you, because this would be my question too, like clearly, okay, you've got Nigerian dwarfs, they have no fiber component, but what would be the difference then to say, we'll just do Angora goats? Because if you have a doe and you're breeding your doe, you're going to get milk. So does a pure Angora goat just not have as much milk production? So is that the benefit to the dual purpose?
I think so. Yeah. Because,
And a little smaller size too. So that I would think also would be right.
right. So because my doe that was more Angora, she really didn't give me as much milk.
Right.
And she wasn't, yeah.
Yeah.
So
well,
It's-
I don't know
it's
where
an
you
experiment.
find time for all of this. I know somebody in the chat, and Rochelle, thank you so much. You actually have like your own personal chat room moderator for your house. program.
Okay,
So
good.
he's doing a nice job answering
Because we're
things.
not following the
No,
chat.
that's okay. And I know one of my friends, asked about had you thought of doing goat yoga? Now, I would imagine it's more about your schedule more than anything else, correct?
Right. Well, some of our kids, goat kids, have gone to goat
Okay.
yoga. They've been
Okay.
borrowed because we have a lot of 4-H friends, and so they'll be doing goat yoga at one of the breweries around here. And I'm like, oh yeah, come pick them up and take them.
I just have too much experience with goat kids and knowing how often they will just drop their pellets without
Yeah, but
knowing.
People
So
seem to not care, right? I mean, that's the experience I guess they're
I
looking
think
for.
they just more or less want to cuddle with the goats, like and you know, to
Exactly.
hold them
Yeah.
than really do much yoga.
100%, 100%. But also too, I mean, not only is it their time, but also, and that's an important part of the conversation. There becomes a time when, if you're having these animals as a hobby and because you love them, and then utilizing their byproducts for your own personal, once you start crossing over though to having something like goat yoga or activities on your farm, you guys have to remember now you're talking about having proper insurance, which costs more money,
Yep.
looking
Yeah.
at different, so there becomes a whole nother logistics. And whether or not you live in Virginia, definitely if you live on Long Island, these are all things that you have to be prepared for. So it's kind of like, making that crossover, it can be a bit of a challenge. So I would imagine, that's another part of it as well. Although I've been happy to hear as you guys are getting on and maybe finding a little more time or centering yourselves with things that make you happy. I know that you've been doing visits with your llamas more, and maybe that's more because you have some llamas that you can do visits with. But let's dive into that. I mean, and I'm hoping, I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know if you have anything end up nearby of like weaving or anything that you've done, because that would be really cool to show
The
people.
only thing I have is this, it's a llama rug that I made. So because our
it might
like
be
our
kind of
llamas,
dark.
it's kind of dark, but it's a rug. See, here's the fringe. So we've been using these up in our bedroom. And so I wanted to make them and then use them and see how they wore, and how you can take care of them. And I have a lot of the like Carol was saying the other day, like what she made the lanyards out of. It's like the
Right.
core spun rug yarn.
Yep.
So yeah, so I have a lot of that. So I'm gonna start right now I've been making baby blankets out of cotton on my loom. But when I'm done with that, I'm gonna start making more rugs.
Natural American.
Cotton, yes. But this is llama. This is from Mary and Roberta, all the grays and blacks.
Now, I know nothing about weaving, but maybe if there's
Really?
somebody in the group, no, I know nothing about weaving. I love the look of it. I love the look of the fabric, which that's why, and some of my people will laugh at me since I don't spend a lot of time knitting, but that's why I love the linen stitch, because it kind of creates a very flat, it reminds me of like a woven type fabric. But in case there's somebody on here that is interested in weaving, so what is your loom like? So many people talk about they love weaving, and it's either just having this little lap loom, or you have this big giant thing that takes up your whole house. But so what kind of a loom do you have? Did you buy it? Was it gifted? Like, can we is it that there behind?
There's one right there.
Well, I
That's
can carry the computer over there, right?
yeah.
Hey, let's
Just
do that.
unplug it.
Okay, so I'll go over here. Sorry. I don't know if you can see it.
There
So
we
this
go.
is my Mighty Wolf Shack brand, and this is the baby blanket I've been doing with the American cotton. And so it is, the reed is 36 inches wide. So there's draw in, but you can weave something like 34
Tilt it
inches.
down just a little bit more, Cindy, so we can see it. There you go. Good.
You see it?
Yep.
So that's the baby blankets. And then I have a smaller shack that doesn't have anything on it to weave smaller items like placemats or scarves.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'm sorry. So, I don't know. I'll just take you on a little tour. So then right here, right here, can you see that? That's a
Yeah.
triangular loom.
Yep.
And let's see. And then this is the loom that's bare right now, doesn't have any warp on it. So because I have no time. But
So
here's
the
my little
warp is the
spinning wheel.
oh there you wait what kind wait go back to that what kind of a spinning wheel do you have?
What is this? The Ashford, I think.
Okay,
I bought this used at a fiber festival. Yeah.
cool.
I have a Shack spinning wheel too, but it misbehaves a lot. It gives me a lot of problems. So
Well, thank you. No, I wanted to thank you. I didn't even expect, and honestly, that was perfect that you were able to kind of take us around so everybody, could see the different things that you have, and again, I mean, it's just to me, especially things that I'm not involved in as much. Now, I wanted to just get a little information out there for people. So the loom that was naked, and you said it had no warp on it. So is the warp what goes vertical or horizontal?
Vertical.
Vertical.
So you have to
So the
warp it.
yes.
Yeah, you
Okay.
have to thread it, and that's the
Okay.
warp. And a lot of people that's just a big stumbling block
Oops.
for some people who have looms, is learning to warp it. But I feel like that class I took, when I first got my loom, she did a really good job of teaching us how to warp it. And I'm pretty good at that. Like I don't know, I don't mind doing it. So that takes a lot of time. That takes the most time. But once you have it warped, then you can just sit down and weave for 10 minutes while something's in the oven. You can go back and forth to it.
Mhm.
And spinning is very relaxing, but it's like once you get started, you want to sit there longer. So you need
Yeah.
a bigger block of time if you're really going to sit down and spin.
Nice.
So I really love, that loom went all over the world with us.
Yeah, it traveled
I always took it with me.
every place that I was stationed.
Yeah.
So it's been to Europe
Yeah. So
and was with us in Germany. Yeah.
I really
Okay.
love it.
Awesome. All right. So where did the llamas come into play?
Well, because of my fiber
As if
interest.
you don't already have enough animals, right?
I know,
Wait,
right?
let's wait. So that's a great question. So all in total right now, I want to see if you guys can answer this because I never can. How many animals do you have?
All together?
Ooh.
See,
I don't
I'm
know.
not the only one. It's a
Ooh.
question you're like,
What?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Two rabbits.
No, we're not. No.
No,
Two
I
rabbits.
want to know. No, I want
You
to
wanna
hear
know?
you do it like I do it. So we
Okay.
got two rabbits.
Two rabbits, 4 dogs, 3 of which are standard schnauzers, all have their AKC championship, a Bouvier female.
Oh yeah, that's the coolest one, and that's kind of how I met them. Also with another client, they have a Bouvier. I just love to say
Bouvier. Bouvier de Flanders.
And then chickens, maybe 20.
20
All right,
chickens.
well, I'll let you slide on the exact chicken count.
Okay,
I
20
know.
chickens.
We have about, I just sold goats. So I think I have 24.
24 goats.
See, that's what happens. The numbers are changing, but you said you
Yeah,
have
four of those 20 are no. 3 of those are for sale.
Yeah. And then now we have 7 llamas,
7 llamas.
2 barn cats,
Did you include the
2
bucks?
horses.
I was just going to
Yeah.
say the horse. How can you forget the biggest thing that eats the most?
Well, a horse and a pony.
Yeah.
Pony of America.
And my bucks get used a lot for breeding, so sometimes they're here and there. Like they're not present, they're working.
They're out on play dates.
I don't know. Did anybody do that math? I didn't do the math, but either way, and again, I just love that question because, it's the same thing that happens to me when people ask that. And again, like you said, especially when there's a little bit of a revolving door, lost track.
58. Oh my.
Wow. Wow.
So,
That's about right.
all
And
of a sudden they're going to be like, we better start selling some more. No, but I will say, there is value, and and we'll get back to the llamas, but, to Paul and Cindy's credit, one of the things, at least I know that I look for when I'm purchasing animals, no matter what it would be, even my Angora rabbits, getting animals from a small family farm where the numbers are seemingly lower, even though 58 seems like a lot, means that you are going to have animals that are handled, interacted with. There's definitely something to be said for not only people's breeding programs, but then again, the handleability of the animals. And I know I take great pride in that with the llamas, but that's the one thing with regards to their goats. And I know over the years that I've known them now, it's kind of been a little up and down in terms of your breeding program. And what I've definitely been hearing from them as a little more lately is, the commitment to, I don't want to say treat it a little more like a business, but to kind of continue to work to create a market so that you do potentially have a waiting list of people looking for your kids when they hit the ground, and people that value the time and energy that they take, that they've talked about tonight, that goes into their breeding program, but also the time and energy that I know that they take in terms of handling the kids and interacting with them, and the grand Walter interacting with them, and your neighbors' kids interacting with them. I mean, every time I'm there for shearing season, inevitably there are kids on the ground. So it's really fun to be able to see that, but I can also attest to that. So, of course, look, we've got people from all over, and just the same with dogs. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're looking to get certain kinds of animals. So, they did mention not only do they have some for sale, they've got some on the way for next year. So I just say kudos to you guys for working to improve not only your breeding program, but now what you're doing to market yourselves a little bit, because you do have a lot to value in what you are doing and what you do with your animals. So
Thank you.
and somebody also is just saying, as far as, being able to purchase your soaps and things like that. So, it's hard when you have two full-fledged jobs, balancing a hobby farm. But at the same time, when you guys maybe at some point make a switch, I know Paul, every once in a while, I hear him talking about retirement. So,
In a few years. In a few years.
so either way, it's just great to see people value, what you do, and I hope that you guys feel that and see that. So llamas. So we've got llamas. So now, Cindy, you've always wanted llamas, and I know your start in llamas was a little interesting in that sense. So how did you? We'll go back to. I'll let you go back to that. How did you happen upon your llamas?
Well, we were looking for a pony we found in the newspaper. We go to see the pony, and we knew she.
Because our first daughter, or our youngest daughter's pony, actually, 3-4 months after we moved her from Quantico out here, actually broke her hip.
Oh.
Right. Yeah. So
Farming. I mean, that's a whole nother chapter, right? I mean, we'll kind of, you can always go in so many different directions. When we talked to Carol, we touched on that a little bit, but again, farming is not for the faint, and it's a big commitment, and there's positives and there's negatives, and it's definitely something that you have to be in it for the long haul. So, as hard as it is to hear about like your initial goat dying and then the pony, and these things happen, unfortunately.
it does. It was terrible. So we're going to look at this pony, and the lady had 2 llamas for sale also, and he's like, Paul said, "No, we're not getting llamas." And I did agree with him.
What do you think about llamas? And I said, no.
And I did agree with him because it's another whole species to figure out, and we're just getting started here. So Sarah and I are looking at the pony. She's riding her, and I look over, and he's looking at Mary, the llama that we have, and
across the fence.
huh?
Wait, no, keep going.
No, I was standing at the fence line, and she came up to me.
And so he looked at me, and I knew instantly that, okay, we're getting llamas too.
Yep.
So we got Mary and her.
I'm a softie at heart.
Yeah. So we got Mary and her partner, Swashbuckler.
They were also standing in about 3 to 4 inches of mud.
Yeah, it was not the best living conditions, probably. Yeah. So we got them, and I always get like a book, and I always read. You look at my bookcase, I have a book or 2 on every kind of animal we have here, and I'm reading about llamas, and like, well, I'm not choosing a llama. I already have this llama, and I'm really not sure what to do with her because Mary has all kinds of attitude. I mean, she will give you the stink eye, she will spit at you, and so that's what we started with, and we just learned how to deal with her.
Yeah.
The first time she got sheared, she was screaming, and I was just like, oh my gosh, why is she doing this? And of course the shearer's like, it's okay. Oh my gosh. I mean, this is before we had a shoot, and she was just
Yeah.
tied up, and
And
so
before we knew you.
What? No, and that's what I started to say. So Mary is your fault, Paul.
Yes, Mary is
Yes.
my fault.
Mhm.
And her
Now-
attitude is my fault because it was Mary and a gelded male by the name of Swashbuckler, that we called him Swash. They were like an old married couple. Um, hearing sounds behind the
Stop.
barn.
No.
Um, but when he passed away, he was probably
I think he was like close to 20.
he was close to
And
20,
he died
and she was
suddenly.
like maybe 12.
Yeah, so we think she's about 25 now.
Yeah. So
Her attitude is not your fault. She had to have come with that attitude.
well,
So do
I
you
know, but
what
when Swash died and she saw me loading him into the bucket on the tractor and carrying him away, it got worse.
Okay.
It did.
But it obviously started. I mean, she had those tendencies prior to, and
Right.
I find it interesting. Did they ever do you know what her story is?
No,
Because
we don't.
really,
No.
a lot of her personalities are very similar to symptoms of berserk llama syndrome in terms of the way she acts and her screaming and her hissy fits and her assertiveness, shall we call it,
Yes.
in the way that she manages her barn.
Yes.
Um,
And
and
her
I'll have
llama
to,
herd.
hearing all of this when we start the Shear and Share tour of 2024, you guys will definitely have to remember to stay on board and keep an eye out when we do get to Wing and Wheel Farm. Mary is quite a character, and she I hide from Mary. There's definitely a level of confidence, which I love the picture that you sent me, Paul, of Mary nose to nose with Cindy. Of course, I show up and I'm not, the most welcomed visitor because I have to shear Mary, and under normal circumstances, this is not a torturous act in which an llama has to undergo. But for Mary, from start to finish, she's gotten a little calmer, a lot calmer as she's gotten older.
Yes.
But we usually leave her till last or we do her first and get her out of
First.
the way.
We do her
That's
first.
right. We do her first and get her out of the way because she will cover the barn in
Yes.
spit.
Yep.
As she starts from beginning to end and screaming, and literally we have to duck, like when I have to go from side to side. I mean, we kind of make a joke about it
Yeah.
as we have to, and it probably just pisses her off even more that we're laughing at her. But it's just Mary, and I'll never
Yeah.
forget when I showed up to deliver llamas. Also, I think there was one time like I was stuck. Like either I couldn't get back in the barn or out of the barn. I don't know, but there was somewhere that I'm like, I can't get out of here because Mary's here. And I run when Mary comes because
Yeah.
I don't know what she's going to do. So it's interesting, and kudos to you guys to learn how to handle her. And most importantly, and I really do mean this, to love her no matter what.
Oh,
Because
yes,
Oh,
we
yeah.
love her.
every animal, when we make these choices, whether it was an intentional choice or it ended up being the wrong choice, we're still committed to them, and
Definitely.
you still have to love them for who they are.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and appreciate it, right? And
Yep.
not always want all your animals to be perfect. And
Right.
that's what I also value about you guys, is that you don't expect them to fit into a box, and you allow them to be themselves and figure out
Yeah.
how to work
They're
with them.
so interesting, and she is actually a very good guard llama. Like, I mean,
Excellent guard
It
llama.
is.
I mean, she guards the goats. I swear she counts them. Like when we have more, she looks at me like, okay. Or if
So-
they're out too long, she wants them put away.
And
Yeah.
so I'm going to use this opportunity because I know back when we were talking with Carol, Aaron had a question. And so remind people, so llamas don't have a flight instinct. So when goats and sheep are in danger or feel like they in danger, their only defense mechanism is to flee. They fight, they take off in flight, and then oftentimes that will only make a situation worse, because even if it was an intentional predator, like let's just say it was dogs who just thought they were out there for fun, any animal running is going to make the predator chase them even more and then potentially
Right.
do more harm
Yeah.
in the end. So a llama does not have a flight instinct. They will oftentimes even approach something that's strange. But
Yes.
so when you say Mary has good guard tendencies, I mean, I know you didn't set out to get her as a guard, but just I wanted to highlight that. So, like when you were saying you think she even counts them, like what do you see her doing in terms of how she guards the goats?
Well, the first time I heard that alarm noise, I had no idea what that was. I was
And
like in the house and I heard this, and everybody on the farm, horses, everybody stopped
stop.
when we heard that. And I don't know, it was like a bear or something in another field. And so
And she's actually walking
towards
towards
it.
it.
And now we see that more with like there will be multiple alarms going off with some of the other llamas. So, but she will, I mean, she cornered a dog that got loose that I was watching, and she's looking at me like, come and get this animal, like she cornered him. And I mean, they're scary when they chase things. Like if they're chasing a dog or a fox. I mean, bears don't really care, but they will let me know there's bears around.
Or the goats.
But or if I mean, JC, when she's like a bowling ball coming at the goats when she wants them to be put away, they put their heads down and they run. And everything runs away from them. They're scary, but they have really
Now, the
good vision.
alarm call, just to highlight, I know some of you that have been with me, you've been with me with Carol when Carol and I do our alarm call challenges, because I can usually do a pretty good alarm call, and
I can't do it.
getting Carol and her friends to try and do it. So that's something we've done on Zoom before. But for those of you that are newer to me, so llamas are actually silent. They call them the silent brothers of the Andes. They have a hum that they make, more
Yeah.
so usually when they're anxious or nervous. It's not a happy noise as sometimes people think. They also, of course, if they're fighting, they have a screaming noise, or like in Mary's case, when we're shearing, they have this just, it sounds like dinosaurs to me, if you could think about like what dinosaurs would sound like. But they have a very unique, what we call an alarm call. And this is a very high pitched shrill that one llama will do. And it's whatever that llama thinks is strange. But as a good guard llama, the guard llama will sound off with this alarm call. And then what that does is it alerts the whole farm, the other llamas, or even other animals.
Horses.
All the animals. Yeah.
I didn't realize that other animals would, respond to it. And so that's that one llama saying, hey, something's going on, something is strange, whether it's valid or not. I'm not comfortable with this, and I want everybody to be aware. Now, I've seen it be really funny things. We were at a llama show one time, and there were TV screens that went to snow. And there was a llama that just kept alarm calling at the TV screens because they were like, I don't know what this is. And then, of course, the whole barn of llamas are like, what's going on? And
Yeah.
you can see them, focusing. But it really is interesting to see them respond. Like I remember one time Mac, my old man, through the woods, the cul-de-sac, they must have either gotten a new dog or maybe somebody was visiting with a dog that he was uncomfortable with. And it was like clear hundreds of feet away, but he could see it. And for a couple of days, he was alarm calling, in that direction. So they really are able to alert their friends, their family, about anything that might be dangerous. And but as they're saying too, a really good guard is going to put themselves between who they see as their family. So Mary sees her goats as her family, and a good guard will put themselves between the pending danger and their family. And now we know that they're very sweet animals, can be very sweet animals, but when they want to be, they're going to charge, they can strike, they can spit, they can scream. They're not going to turn their back and kick, right? Because then they can't see what's happening. And so if need be, they will fight to defend their family against a predator. And I've not visibly seen that, but I've certainly heard of that, happening. And can the animal get injured as a result of it? Of course. But more often than not, the size of a llama can often,
They're
deter.
intimidating.
Yeah, they're intimidating. And
Sure.
Tabitha, what I've also seen is when she has made that alarm in the past, some of the other llamas will actually come and towards her and stand in close proximity. So it's not just like she's the only one that's guarding the herd.
I think she's training JC. I think JC is going to be the matriarch after Mary.
Yeah.
So we that's so interesting. So we have to, okay, so they've got married, and so was after Mary, is that when then Corinne so who came after Mary?
A friend of ours, Pete, he had 2 llamas he was having a hard time taking care of. So that was Corinne and Max.
Okay.
Max died pretty soon after we had
Yeah.
him, but Corinne was the first llama. So then it was Mary and Corinne. And Corinne was affected by the meningeal parasite. So, but she survived. And then we got the 3 that you hooked us up with.
So yeah, so let me share this story because I love this story. And I think so we were trying to decide earlier today how you guys found me. And so I think that was from Mary Brownstein, correct?
Correct.
So a neighbor or in the neighboring town,
Yeah.
had llamas also. Somehow or other, Mary Brownstein found me as a shearer and then I guess shared with you guys.
Yeah, we
Well,
were looking for a
we-
shearer. We needed one.
We were looking for a shearer, but we had heard about Mary because she had Bouviers. And her
Right,
license,
that's right,
her
yes, she
license
was-
plate says Bouvier on it. So we pulled into the feed store one day and I got out, I was going in and I noticed the license plate said Bouv on it. So I told Cindy, I said, hey, I think this is
Yeah, we heard
the
about her.
woman.
So I went in the feed store and I'm like, okay, I found her. So then we've been friends
You're
ever
like,
since.
start scoping out who looks like they have a Bouvier, right? This is weird.
Yeah.
This is weird things that livestock people do. Actually, I have to wait. Funny story. So same thing. Also, it wasn't a feed store. It was a bar, but never mind that. There was somebody, it's the same kind of thing. There was somebody in the parking lot that had a license plate that said 8 seconds. I'm like, there's somebody in this bar that's a cowboy and like does,
Yeah.
I was single then. But mind you,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, who in this bar has
Bar
that
is
out there with that license
yeah.
plate?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
just the
so
weird
that's how
stuff
we
us
found
farm
Mary.
people
That's
do.
how we found her. I mean, and she and her husband brought their Bouvier over here and
Yeah,
it
so
was
we've
good
been
time.
friends.
We've been good
No,
friends.
wait, this is a funny thing too, though. But do you guys live in the same county as she does?
Mhm.
What's that county?
Fauquier.
Fauquier.
No, that's not how it's really pronounced, is it?
Yes,
Fauquier.
Fauquier.
But how is it
It's
spelled?
not what you think.
Wait, how is it spelled?
Fauquier.
All I can tell you is from New York, if you want to try to say the county that they live in, it comes out as just as what you would expect. I think
Yeah.
it's the funniest thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, it cracks me up every time. And I don't
He
know why.
was-
I remember
was a
that with
French
Mary,
person.
she would always have like the paper or something, and it's just the funniest name to me. Anyway, so
It's French from the Revolutionary War.
yeah, I can also say that same thing in French too. So, all right. So you guys meet Mary. Mary tells you about me. So that's how I kind of come into the picture. Now, the part of the story I really want to share is just, again, this community, whether it's the fiber community, the animal community. So oftentimes, I'm shearing for people and more often than not, my customers are not the ones that are just going to like haphazardly decide they don't want to do animals anymore. I mean, sometimes it happens, but more often than not, there's a reason of why maybe a customer needs to no longer have their animals. And in this instance, for me, I had a couple of the Milstons that I had been cheering for I don't know, maybe it was like 8 years or so, like quite a while. I mean, I knew all of their animals. They had 3 females and they had 4 males. And they've been longtime customers, great people. And unfortunately, and well, interestingly, so part of the same culture of the individuals that live in the country but travel to Washington, D.C. for work. So Dennis, the husband, also was another person that would travel to D.C. for work. Very high stress jobs, as I'm sure they all are. And unfortunately, Dennis had a heart attack. That's the short part of the story. And they really needed to drastically change their lifestyle as a result of that. And I always try to do whatever I can to help in the placement of animals if the owners are asking me. And I don't know how it was, but I somehow or other, I don't think that I had sheared for you guys yet, or maybe I did. Maybe I just
No,
sheared
you did.
You did.
One.
It was like
One.
the second time you were there, you
Yeah.
told us, and then I followed you to their place and met
Yeah,
them.
well, because
Something like
somehow or
that.
other, I think somehow or other, I knew that you were open to getting, more animals. And essentially, when I knew that this family needed to, downsize, get rid of their livestock, so these guys stepped up to the plate. Now, these were 3 older girls. They were, interestingly enough, a step up in the fiber of
In the
which you had
fiber,
some of your earlier
which
ones.
we were trying to improve on too.
Exactly.
Yep.
So the same improvement, that we talked about with their goats, even though this was going to be an acquisition and adoption, these llamas were actually of Argentine background, which means they were of smaller size. But the Argentine variety of llamas, what are you laughing for?
Gracie.
Oh, okay. All right.
Smaller stuff.
So supposedly, so technically, the bigger joke is these llamas were actually supposed to be miniature llamas. That was like a thing for a little while, for like a hot minute in our industry. And the Argentine llamas are a smaller statured llama. And so many people were trying to create these miniature llamas utilizing the Argentine background. None of these llamas ended up qualifying as miniatures, so much to the Milston's dismay, that was kind of the joke of it. But they were still smaller statured. Gracie was an anomaly. She was both much taller than she should be, as well as wider. But some of us are just like that. It happens.
Hence my nickname for our nickname for linebacker llama.
Yeah, she definitely is. And then from a fiber perspective, so the Argentines have a very dense fiber, synonymous to alpaca, for instance. So when we talk about that, that means per square inch, they have more follicles per square inch to give you a denser fleece. The advantage to that would be that you're getting more volume, more poundage off your animal when you're shearing. That would be, the advantage to having that denser fiber. And they do have a softness, it certainly was a step up from what they were working on. So super cool for me that, these llamas that I sheared for a number of years, then went off in 2 directions. And the 3 girls, I found a home with the Millards. And then my 4 boys, not my 4 boys, but the 4 boys ended up going to North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
And I still shear for them there as well. So just a really cool story in that sense. Now, flash forward. Now, these llamas were wonderful. They were older, so that was also very nice of you guys, to be willing to, take in. They weren't old, but they were still older animals. And I don't know. So then talk to me about, because then this is, of course, and look, I even thought to myself, I'm like, I'm going to get done earlier tonight. Well, shit, I'm not. So, all right, now, how do we get to the point of which you have my llamas? So I don't remember that either. I don't know.
Well, wait. First, you have to go back that we got Mary Brownstein's llama because
Oh,
she
well,
had two, and one broke its leg and had to be euthanized. And then we got their other llama, Corinne.
yes, yes. So
Then
then,
we
so then
another older llama.
yeah.
So and then we were able to get JC from you. So that was
But I don't even remember the conversation. Actually, I think it's that one's fault next to you.
Me? Yeah. It probably was.
yeah.
Because
I
I
mean,
saw
no,
a
really.
I saw a picture of JC on your website shortly after she was born,
Because
and
I
knowing
don't run around. I mean, I think what I want
right,
to say is I'm not cheering for people saying I have llamas for sale. You know,
right.
I'm just blessed that most of my animals do go to my customers. So it's always the customer that has to come to me and say something.
Yeah.
And somehow or other, yeah, I don't
So
remember how
you were there shearing, and I think we had a conversation about the quality of the fiber of ours. We knew they were getting older, and Cindy and I knew we wanted to continue with llamas and improve the fiber aspect of it. And the only way that we were going to do that was get a good quality llama. So I had seen the picture of JC when she was a Korea you had on the website, and just fell in love with her. And so you were there sharing. I said, hey, if you're ever thinking about selling her, let us know.
Yeah.
now.
And you did later.
Yeah.
Well,
Not
but and
right away.
also and this is again, and so yes, but what the significance for me that I want to share, which I mean I'm sure I told you guys anyway. So first, for those of you, even those of you that were with me from kind of COVID on, JC is the earlier days. So I had a llama named Maria that I brought home, and it was a big sort of internet joke because I didn't tell him, which I
Oh
didn't have
yeah.
to. And so Maria came home, and then that was kind of a joke on Instagram that, was he going to notice that there was a new llama? Now, mind you, she was white and sequestered in quarantine, not difficult to find, but I had her all the way in the back of the farm, and he really never noticed. So that was a big joke, for a while that way. But the aside from that, so JC is she 4 now? She 4?
Gonna be 4.
She's going to be 4.
Okay. Yeah. So she was the year after Stewie, Georgia, Oliver, for those of you that know that whole clan. JC, and this, okay, I have to, man, we're going to have to figure this out somehow. Here's the funny part. So JC was also born the year with Lorelei, who you now have Lorelai's daughter. You have the weirdest, most incestuous group of animals that are all now related. It is so cool. So JC and
Hey, neither.
Lorelai were buddies because I had 2 girls and 2 boys, and JC and Lorelai were best buddies.
Okay.
And Lorelai was Georgia's sister. Lorelai went off to Carol,
Yeah.
right? And
Oh.
then you guys ended up with JC. Now, the part that I love is JC got very, very sick. She ended up getting an obstruction in her intestine, and it took a little bit to really figure that out. We didn't know what that was, and we were trying to treat it at home until finally, and many of you, this is where many of you kind of latched on to me. It was the first time I ever kind of allowed people to be part of something that was a bit traumatic for me and a bit emotional for me. And so I remember clearly, it was like 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, that's it. I got to go to Cornell. And I just loaded them up in the van, and off we drove through the night. And I kind of brought everybody along with me. And so short story, JC has an obstruction. She has to go through surgery. It was, really kind of very like traumatic that way. But, at least we were thankful that she was going to be okay. What llama gets a hairball? I have no idea, apparently mine. And so that's basically, what it was. But because we didn't really know what was wrong with her, we actually had unintentionally, and I say we, it was myself and my vet, had unintentionally used a little bit too much in the way of pain medication, with her also being dehydrated. And so she had very elevated and damaged. That's what I'm looking for. She had damaged kidney and liver issues as a result of it. And so we were able to rectify that to some degree, but I'll never forget, they said to me, you know, moving forward, if she's ever in a situation in which she needs Banamine, this kind of, you know, medication, you know, you need to be very careful about that. And her medical history has to be monitored very carefully.
Mhm.
My nurse over here. So of course, when I knew that they were interested in her, I mean, look, I had already had, you know, thousands of dollars to make her well, but I was so concerned. I did not want her to go somewhere where she was going to be bred, because I was concerned about her overall well-being. God forbid something should happen. I just was worried about that. And then of course, medically wise, needing to be handled properly. So these are things that I have to think about, that when I'm selling an animal, it's not so much, I didn't care about recouping anything. I wanted to make sure that her long-term history was going to be properly managed, and that it was going to be respected in terms of what she went through, and you know, keeping that in mind, you know, over the long haul, making sure her weight is good, you know, all those kinds of things. So those are things that I think about, and why I was very reluctant, you know, until I knew she was going to be fine and better. And so, you know, that was some of my reasons also for feeling so secure in selling her to you guys versus, you know, to somewhere else as well.
Yeah, she's great.
Now you've got this little monster, because she's a tiny little package and she is a fireball, just like her mom. Tons of
Yes.
personality, gorgeous
Yep.
fiber, gorgeous fiber. But you know, there was the realization though that she was alone in the sense of her age. But remember how Mary was with her? Since I know we already have some Mary fans in the chat already now, let me tell you, trying to introduce JC into that farm with Mary, because I was doing my job and I'm like, we have to walk her all around. I was so scared. Mary was like all up in her business. Mary was like this
Oh yeah,
around my baby.
my luck. Yes.
Yeah, they're pals.
Yes, she was.
And Mary
But when
keeps up
we
with her.
first brought
Yeah.
her, I mean, literally, she was like guarding JC, like from anybody that would come
Yeah.
near.
Right.
So
Yeah.
she was like, this is
And
my
she's
baby.
taken her, Mary has taken JC under her wing, teaching her how to be the matriarch guard llama on the
Yeah.
property.
Oh yeah.
So it's I mean, it's amazing to see that. Now, okay, so you're like, we've got this younger llama, we know our other llamas are older, and then I know then that's when you know, at that point we have a different kind of relationship now, and you made it clear that you would be interested in, you know, getting some additional llamas so that you could start to bring in some youth, you know, into your
Yeah.
family as your older llamas, you know, do start to move on, which that turnover, you know, has unfortunately started to happen for you guys already. And then this next one's your fault too.
Mine? Probably. Probably.
We
Yeah,
all
It's
have
hard
a
not,
husband
it's
like
hard
you.
not to fall in love with a, you know, a Korea on a coffee cup.
Well, oh, that's right. I did do that already. So
Yeah.
so now the next journey, right? Everyone's got their Carly cows.
Yeah.
Carly Cup here. Yeah.
So the next journey, of course, which mind you, Maria has since been, actually she's not retired from her breeding, but she was retired from my breeding program, because actually, as I thought about it, many of you were not with me when JC went to Cornell, but you were with me when Carly went to Cornell. Mind you, this is from the same mom. So there's probably a wing at the Cornell Veterinary Hospital that is named after Maria, because that is
Yeah.
the thousands, probably to the tune of like $10,000, as a result of Maria's two only children that she gave me. Needless to say, after the second one, I'm like, Maria is done for me. Not, I mean, she's lovely. She's fine. She now lives in my friend's farm in Pennsylvania, but I was no longer going to be breeding her, as a result of that. Whether or not there were any correlations, they were just a little too connected, for me. But
Yeah.
just only in the interest of time, because this is a whole nother story in itself. You could come back for Carly Hour, but if you do not know my little Carly baby, she was actually born with a severe genetic defect in which she did not have an anal opening. So it's called anal atresia. The fun part of it is that I did not discover that until 24 hours later. And I was looking right in that area because when she dropped on the ground, she was so gorgeous. And I was so excited to see that she was a girl and that she had all this beautiful coloring. And in order for me to know she was a girl, that means I was looking under the tail. But who looks for buttholes? That's just the way it goes. Mind you, now the joke is I do look for buttholes. And I've been aware of this problem. I've just never had it born on my farm. So the short end of the stick is that, this is, yes, now I do check. So this is when most of you really jumped on. So I do stand corrected. This was more of the story that everybody was along for the ride with me. And, 2 surgeries later, I had a beautiful girl that was, fully functioning and, was hopefully going to have a healthy life. And these folks really expressed an interest to her. Actually, they wanted Maria and Carly. They wanted the whole family because they already had JC, so they wanted her sister Carly, and they even expressed interest in Maria. My reason of wanting to separate them is I really like for moms and babies to get the opportunity to have independence and gain confidence. And if I sold Maria and Carly together, I just was concerned of not having the way to wean them and then be able to put them back somewhere later. And I think that, in my opinion, causes like behavioral issues, that weird attachment. So that's more of why, I was looking to separate them in that sense. But again, obviously these guys, have taken on a female that in a sense, does have a medical issue that they're well aware at some point in time could, come back to being an issue, and she could otherwise also live a totally, healthy, happy life.
Mhm.
It's
Doing
certainly
great.
a little bit of a gamble, but I appreciate that they, again, with the medical background is, the only reason why I would have considered that. And everybody knows how special Carly was to me, and still is, of course. That's my monkey. Um, but then, they also got Lana. So Lana was born the following year.
Yep.
So you really have 3 right in a row.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you've got JC, you've got Carly, and you've got Lana. And then now they just brought home their 4th new younger addition on Saturday. So congratulations to you
Thank
guys on
you.
your new
Yeah.
child.
And Nessie is 7 months old. She's from Carroll, Buck Hollow Farms, Carroll.
Yep.
So glad, and that's a story in itself. But she's all white, which is what Cindy was looking for.
At the
And
fiber
so, but
fiber
so, and
store.
you guys don't probably, so guys, Nessie is the full, I don't know what this makes them, but so Nessie is related to our Gracie. So what is so fun, and I don't know if somebody can follow this, you win a prize. So they own JC and Carly, who are sisters because they have the same mom. Then they own Carly and Lana, who are sisters because they have the same dad.
They have the same dad.
Now they've got Nessie, who is related to Lana and Carly because Nessie's mom is a Sir Arthur daughter. And those 2 are Sir Arthur daughters. So those are all related somehow. I mean, it's just crazy, but
It's
it's
crazy.
amazing. And then
Yeah.
again, like I said, now Nessie's mom was best friends with JC. They're not related, but they were best friends. So
Okay.
that's kind of just fun in itself. And essentially, your Nessie is the spitting image of my Gracie, because Georgia and Lorelai are full sisters and both
Yeah.
bring the same dad.
Yeah.
There's an episode of Maury Povich for you, is what
Yeah,
I always
exactly. And we actually took Carly and Lana with us to go pick up Ness.
Carly was not happy, but she went.
Yeah.
And Lana's so chill. And then Lana and Nessie kind of stayed in the barn together. And now when we see them, they were pushed together.
Yeah,
like,
we integrated them
this morning.
Out into the field. I mean, we had them, in the dry lot that we have
So they could see each other.
for the horses. We kept them in their stalls, but they were able to run around, and the llamas were able to interact with them through the stock fences, and then we integrated them out into the field today. So it went better than I imagined.
I don't know. We have
I am so looking forward to being able to, see everybody together. Again, it's obviously, been another long but interesting program, and I am going to cut it. The whole llama part, of course, is one that you guys can jump on, follow them at Wing and Wheel. They don't do a ton, but they're doing more. But whatever you share with me, then I put it on mine. I mean, again, the whole gist of this program for me was really getting to talk about some other livestock, some other interesting things, incorporating the fiber, and then also really giving you guys a face of people that own some of my animals that which you guys learn to love and know and watch them grow, and then watch them move on to a new home, and hopefully help a little bit of that connection and connecting all of us together in this community. So before I do say my official goodbyes, we are, oh my gosh, you know what, this is okay, because I don't have contacts anymore because I fried my eyeball out the other night. So I'm looking, we're still at we're actually at a solid 36. I got to be honest, I thought that said 16 at first because I couldn't see, but I needed to make sure I could see the number. So let me close out the chat. Now would be that time. So I need for you guys, wait, Erin, what's up, girl? Hang on. Just go ahead. What's up?
Just can you give a really quick explanation of Berserker Llama syndrome real quick? Lisa asked that a while ago.
Sure. No, absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So yeah, super quick, because that's a whole nother topic in itself, but there is something that's called Berserk Llama syndrome, ABS, aberrant behavior syndrome. It is something that can happen with alpacas also. Essentially what it is that llamas, unlike the goats, which we were talking about being bottle fed, things like that, it's really important for llamas to bond with their mothers. They are not an animal that you want to bottle feed. And if you have a baby that has lost its mom and you do need to bottle feed it, you want it to be very businesslike, very cold. You don't want that baby to attach itself to you, unlike the situation where we're talking about with the goats and wanting them to be personable and handleable and friendly. Now, on the other hand, you also have some babies that when they are born, they just are naturally very friendly, like Georgia, even like right now, Gracie is. And so you have to be super careful with those personalities. So in Berserk Llama syndrome, generally males, but it can also be in females, is that there's an over attachment to a human or to an individual where they no longer see that human as the superior, and they also lose their innate, they don't have that innate sense of fear of humans. And I'm not saying fear in a bad way, but they're not respectful of a human space. So it could be an animal that could just forcibly, like Mary, that's why I say, like Mary, forcibly put herself in your personal space. And look, also even Carly, and that's where I talked to you guys about getting, with Carly and keeping her working, keeping her minding her manners, giving her structure. So It's and in her case, it was the overhandling just because of all of her medical stuff, and admittedly me being a little smoochy. So in the sense, when they're younger, it's cute when they're nibbling on your clothes, nibbling on your shoes, and you're like, oh, that's adorable, and you want to treat them like a puppy dog. But once they reach sexual maturity, what happens in a berserk llama situation is, now let's say it's a male, they're chasing you, or they're treating you like an adversary, or if you're a female, they're treating you like you might be a female and trying to take you down and knock you down. So there's an aggressiveness in which they're treating you like another llama. Oftentimes it's just more confused. So the spitty behavior that we see that Mary exhibits, it's kind of like just being a spoiled brat, but it can turn to aggression. So you have to be super careful of it. And in females, it's basically just having an absolute spoiled bitch, excuse my language, and they overreact about lots of different situations, but they can also get into your space, you know, and I've told you guys too, like if Carly gets into your space, you knee her in the chest, you spray water at her, you know, and she's not, you know, full blown by any means.
Oh, no.
But in the wrong hands, a super cute, friendly baby will become an animal that, unless otherwise able to be managed, would have to be euthanized. So it's a man-induced situation. So I know that wasn't brief, because it's a whole nother thing. And that's my whole other soapbox. When you see these things on Instagram, or when you see animals attack and llamas chasing people, or there was that tiny alpaca sensation on Instagram, you know, running around the house and doing all these things with their people. There's so much wrong with that. I can't even begin to tell you. So, but thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. So, okay.
Yeah.
So pick
But
a
Carly
number.
did do great at a kid's birthday party.
She did. And she just needs a job. That's all.
Yeah.
She is essentially a spoiled child, rightfully so, with medical conditions. You know, those kids get spoiled.
Oh, yeah.
And she needs a job and she needs structure. And now she just needs to continue to have tough love. You cannot be the parent that says, oh, you can do whatever you want. No.
No.
She's going to love you
Oh,
regardless. It's no, we're not doing this now, or no, behave
Yep.
yourself. And she'll be fine. She'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right, before
She's
we
doing
lose, we
great.
already lost 2. So I need you to pick a number from 1 to 34.
21.
All right, hang tight. Don't anybody move. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Scroll up. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 18, 19, 20, and 21. It's Madeline. Is that Madeline Shark? All right. Well, Madeline, you are tonight's winner. So you get a, yes, it is Madeline. There you go. So you get a $20 store credit that will go into your account after the 12 days of Christmas are over. So there you go. Congratulations.
Yay.
All right.
Thanks.
So, oh, absolutely. Look, guys, thank you again for everything tonight. Thank you for being in here again for the long haul. Before we say goodbye, I want to remind you tomorrow night's program. I know everyone's a great one. Another great one, somebody I don't even really know that much. Stephanie Wilkes is going to be joining us. She's an author of a fiber-related book, and she is also another female shearer based out of California. And her and I had the distinct pleasure of being part of a documentary that was done by Isabel Rossellini about the benefits of shearing. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to work on this tomorrow so you can see this very brief 10 minutes documentary as part of our program. And then her and I are going to be in conversation about lots of stuff because I really know nothing about her. I've never met her. We've only just talked and now had this connection as part of being in this project together. So Paul and Cindy, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here and really adding something special to the program as everybody has with our lineup this year. Thank you for making the soaps for us today. And I look forward to that. So as soon as you can, you drop those in the mail. We'll get those part of the basket. Don't forget, guys, your coupon code TDOC23 That gets you 10% off most everything in the site. And as our beautiful basket is starting to evolve with goodies from all of our speakers, for every $10 that you spend, that gets you a ticket to put you in the winning for that drawing to happen on the wrap-up party. Guys, you're amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to give me your feedback. I love seeing all of your faces. And we will see you again tomorrow night. So much love, everybody. Thank you so
Bye.
much, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.